And we're back. Going to give a quick shout out to my boy Mauricio, talking about jiu-jitsu, one of my main training partners. And Stefan, what's going on, man? Toot toot. So we were talking about the awkwardness of this Facebook dating app and how, what did you say? You said they got a lot of attention.
We got 100 million users.
Yeah. And then like you said something about them being the first. Well, so, they were early to the game.
But yeah. So basically when Facebook wanted to get people engaged with the platform, they allowed the first couple apps to be very aggressive with how they became viral.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, early bird gets the worm.
Yeah. So like this is something that became apparent to me lately, just listening to certain people. Gary Vee, we both listen to him a lot. He's a fascinating character.
And just one point that Gary Vee makes that I think is interesting with this conversation is the idea of nostalgia and the power of nostalgia. And so even as you have things like the cloud kitchen and all these kind of massively accelerating technologies, I think that almost increases the desire for things like Della and things that are, intimate and real.
Let's hope. No, that when I just saw him say that, within the last month, and he's really into buying like nostalgic brands. And like I operate off of nostalgia. I love it. I mean, I spend a good portion of my time like just rewinding and we were talking about Sears, and like I have these fond memories when I was a kid growing up in Nashville, and like we went to Sears and I thought it was amazing. It was like this massive place. And, it seemed so much more, what's the word? Less sterile and definitely more intimate. And there's a word that I want to say, and it's just escaping me right now, but nostalgic. I just have so much nostalgia for that time. Innocent. Yeah. Just super innocent. And I'm sure it was like crazy Chinese made goods and stuff like that. Like all the shit that's happening now is still happening then, but maybe not. I mean, we're talking about
it wasn't back then. I mean,
like 1979,
prior to like globalization, it was.
Yeah. It really seemed innocent. And I just like have such a fond memory of that. And I would I want to keep that alive in some way, like whatever. If I make enough money, I don't want to buy the jets like he does, but I want to, participate in some nostalgic brands or nostalgic like what would you call it, like retro nostalgic, like a new company that's like
to revive an old brand
or just make a new one that's reminiscent of an old one and just like kind of keep that going. It's fascinating. But so one of the things that the point I was going to make that he says a lot of really great things, but is there are two ways to be super successful with attention. One is just be a pioneer, be one of the first. If you're one of the first, you kind of get undivided attention, whether it's digital or whether, you go into a neighborhood that's kind of desolate, it doesn't have much going on, and you open one of the first businesses or whatever it is you want to do, and it's not really happening yet, and you do it well. Right. You get a certain amount of attention, and you really got to, like we were saying on the break, you really got to fuck it up to lose that attention, which certainly happens, but it's like actively, you got to do something to lose that attention.
It's also riskier though, right? When you take these things,
absolutely,
it's more risk and more reward.
Crossing the street is risky, whatever. I don't worry about that so much, but breathing air is risky these days. Everybody's like, don't eat gluten, don't breathe, don't drink the water, whatever. And then the other point that he made is like, if you don't get in early, the other way to just be super successful is just be the best, just totally kill it, which is hard to do too. That's risky in a different way.
To be the best or be the first. Yeah. There aren't that many.
I like the first better. I've never quite been the best at anything. So
there's a third way. There's a third way. And this is kind of
hear the plug.
well, this is kind of the what I'm telling you before in terms of the challenge with these tech companies is if you don't have to care about profits, and you have a lot of money, you can go you can go anywhere and you can buy growth.
Right.
And so, if you have enough money, you can buy customers, users. Doesn't mean that they're going to, you're going to make a profit on them, but that's not a sustainable strategy, but it is a strategy that many companies do pursue. And
to be clear, we're not talking about buying likes or followers on like Instagram the way that somebody that wants to be, like a successful musician, and you have to have a certain amount of likes. You're talking about buying attention.
Well, and not just attention, but behavior. And so this is something that's very sometimes difficult for me to explain, and that
it's still a little creepy. We're going to call this show the Creepy Show. Go on. This is what the youth is doing today, everybody.
So, I mean, if you think about what's actually happening so I'm primarily a Facebook and Instagram media buyer. That's kind of my bread and butter.
So before you go on, let's
finalize.
Like you came back to New York and you worked for some of these companies, but now you're doing your own thing. You want to just describe that quickly?
So dating site.
The 30-second commercial. Go.
Yeah, so real quick, dating site. I was doing basically product analysis. So we'd run dozens of A/B tests on the product, like the ranking algorithm or different types of UI. So my job was to determine like what version of the product was the best for driving revenue. So did that. Then I moved over to FanDuel back in 2015, right when we had the war with DraftKings. It was a big.
Were you still in Chicago?
I was in New York at the time.
You were in New York.
Yep. And so
did you move back here for work or just to be closer to family or both?
Bit of that. Also, kind of tired of working at Sears, so it kind of all melded together.
Surrounded by old men. No, I'm kidding.
But FanDuel was a very interesting experience because FanDuel was flush with money. We were actually when Instagram first became a paid platform, we were the largest spenders of anyone in the world on the platform.
Had to have been an interesting time.
Well, we ended. I mean, the thing with FanDuel was we played under the the game of skill harbor. So essentially, with some of these gambling laws, there was an opening allowed for fantasy. So it was a game of skill. And so we kind of took that loophole, built a business around it, and then funneled hundreds of millions of dollars into marketing. What ended up happening is that you couldn't escape the ads, the TV ads, or any of the ads. And so you'd have like congressmen and like senators, and they were just getting blasted with these ads. And eventually they were like, this is not acceptable.
So you got some heat.
Got some heat. We actually I remember we staged a protest outside of Eric Schneiderman back when he was Attorney General outside of his office, and the chant was "Game of skill," but it actually sounded like "Gay moms kill." It wasn't an effective protest.
And then they saw your profile and they're like, "Yep, he's got 2 moms. His kid's coming after us. He's a terrorist."
Yeah.
What's up, Ashton? I see you there. What's going on? So, you go from working for these large companies. Eventually, you started doing this on your own.
Yeah, and so and primarily what I did is I started working with WAG in 2016, and basically that was 3 years ago, and essentially the job was to help WAG acquire new dog owners to book a walk for the first time, and so primarily that was through Facebook and Instagram, and so just the way it works is. You tell Facebook as long as if you can measure what you want, be it, someone.
You have to be specific.
Yeah. It's all about it's all about measuring what you care about. So for any business, if WAG, it's a new dog owner. For Della, it's a new customer. For a meditation app, it's someone to subscribe. Every business has something.
Some are purely digital, some are brick and mortar, some are a combination of both.
But Facebook can actually receive conversions from. It's very easy to do it digitally, right? If something happens in your app or your website, easy to pass it back.
You see it, yeah.
But even for brick and mortar, you can actually pass back offline subscriptions to Facebook and use that for optimization. And so ultimately, it kind of comes down to you have a budget, you have a goal, and you can translate your budget directly into behavior, and you can measure it at the most precise level. And so
it's fascinating. It's 6 months ago, I've been like, "You're a creep, get away," and now I'm like, "Let's do this." I'm like very interested in this. Get into this creepy game, and according to people like Gary Vee who are heavily involved in this market, they're saying like this is the future of marketing. Like forget about the old untraceable methods. This guy that comes into Della all the time in the wine store, a local guy. He's really great. He works for it was a cable network. It might be Sci-Fi or something like that. And his particular group branched off and specifically started doing YouTube videos and really tracking. They're designing for YouTube, and they can see when people drop off, when people rewind. Like they get super finite information. And his dad was also in marketing, and they joke around about like his dad was in print material, and radio. And he was like, marketers always joke that 50% of marketing works. They just don't know which 50%,
Right.
like who's completely untraceable. They're just like, well, here's some money. Let's see what happens, you know, and like
the sales come in, the money goes out. And you think
yeah, Jesus, you know, like, or a billboard and, you know, or like radio. It's like, well, people are tuning in, but maybe they're in the bathroom, you know, like they're tuning in. We know that like this many people, but they might not be
and that's
listening.
the biggest, and it still hasn't been solved to be honest.
Sure.
The
It probably never will be. I mean, well, okay.
But I'd say that
maybe it will be.
the single biggest problem that even for sophisticated companies, like attribution, the ability to I mean, for Facebook, it's easier, but the ability to tie a dollar spent to a behavior, easy on digital channels, but very difficult offline. But also, if you don't do offline, if you don't have a brand presence too, that ultimately funnels down to hurting your business.
Oh yeah.
And so it's a challenge. Direct response is what I do. It's very easy because I can take a dollar, turn it into a customer, directly attributable. For a brand advertiser, if they want to change perception, it's much harder to directly correlate that.
Right.
But it needs to be done nonetheless.
Definitely. So another thing that I've heard Gary Vee say is, so the two things that really he's driven home that affect me. It's had a big effect on me lately. But one of them you were talking about is just like putting as much money back into the business and thinking of that long-term growth instead of like the transaction-based approach to business.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is your brand, because everything in the middle, especially with what's happening with cloud kitchens, and it's not going to be about the product. I mean, your product, it is, and one end is going to be about the product, and the product better be very good. But then the accessibility and the competition is going to be like just gray matter. And then on the other end is your brand, like whether it's you or your business, like the narrative of your business, all of it, it's got to be there, because if you're not doing either, you're just like sinking into the hole and disappearing, which is like, that sucks, because there's a lot of really good products, companies, brands out there that are not, especially if you're analog, if you're just like, no, they don't feel it. And I didn't feel it. Like once I felt it, I was like, oh my God, I was living down a hole, like trying to scrape back up the wall. I think I got some traction.
Yeah.
So we're going to scrape to a quick commercial, and then we'll come back and wrap things up. And we have to talk about jiu-jitsu a little bit, at least a little bit.
I think so.
We'll be back in a minute. You're listening to Entrepreneurial Web.